Well, hello, and welcome back to GearHeadGeeks, where in this episode we are going to be replacing the transmission in a Kawasaki Ninja H2. This is a tale of woe. So I will explain what happened once we start taking the bike apart. So stay tuned and watch the whole transmission replacement on this bike. So first things first is here is the transmission that is going to go in to the H2. It is a transmission out of an H2 SE, and the reason I'm putting this in here is because of the fact that the gear ratios from third on up are exactly the same, but the gear ratios in first and second are slightly taller, making this but a closer ratio gearbox than the other one. And this is a good thing because, to be honest with you, first gear on my bike is pretty much useless unless you want your front wheel in the air. I mean, you can't touch the throttle without it just doing a wheelie. Second gear was a bit too short, and it made it a bit hairy coming out of corners in second. And, you just give it a little throttle and the front wheel's up in the air mid-corner, and that's okay for the most part, but it's just a little too hard to control, So, a little bit taller gearing in second and first will make this thing much better. So, but the transmissions are identical other than that. This thing's a thing of beauty, to be honest with you. But the real question is, why am I replacing it? Not because I want better gear ratios. No. What happened was, let me put this in there. There we go. What happened was I was getting ready to go for a ride, and I went for a ride on a beautiful day. Sunday was a very, very nice day, and I went up to Virginia City, close to where I live, and came down the truck route and stopped at a gas station, and I shifted into second, and it was going clunk, 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 and I pulled in the clutch, and it stopped going clunk, 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 clunk. So what I did was I went and got some gas. I finished getting some gas, and then I shifted into first, and it was fine. I thought, something's going on here. Then I shifted into second, clunk, 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 it real loud, and you could feel it, a vibration all the way through the bike. So I thought, we have blown second gear. So what I did is I got home. When I shifted into first, and then I would just hold the clutch in and shift into third, and that allowed me to get home because I just went in third and beyond. And once I got it home, I chucked again, and second gear was still clunking very, very loudly, and you could feel it. It was a really, really bad clunk. So what I've probably done, I've been very hard on second gear, and what I probably did is just blew a tooth off the second gear. This bike has got 84,000 miles on it, so I've gotten the goodness out of that transmission, and as hard as I've been on it, because every single time I shift into second gear, I try to wheelie it, and that does take its toll after a while. So anyway, we're gonna put a new transmission in it. We're gonna see what's wrong with it here, because I haven't taken it apart yet, obviously, because I'm taking it apart now. But we're gonna take it apart and take a look and find out what's wrong. And once we do, you're going to be right along with me. So hang on, and I will start tearing off all the rest of this fairing, and we'll drain the oil. I've got to go to the other side and pull the countershaft sprocket, a few things, but you'll see all of that. Okay, starting with a perfectly clean drain pan. Perfectly clean. I wiped it out. It is dry to the touch. It is clean. I'm going to drain the oil because I want to see if anything comes out. And it pops right off. And the gasket is still on there, but I don't see any particulate in there at all. It's just super clean, which is nice. Means nothing really was grinding away in there. We will gently, evenly remove these guys. Spring. All right, and now we can take our pressure plate off. There is a bearing inside here you want to make sure you don't lose. You don't want to lose anything, obviously, but okay. So now we have a 27 millimeter here. So we'll work on it. I think what I'll do here is pull some of these plates out of the way. We can do that. When you pull the plates out, just go on ahead and stack them up on the pressure plate, and that makes it a little easier for you to put them back in if you need to. Well, let's see here. What's going on? There we go. Little brute force and ignorance. Okay, there's that. I'll get this guy out of the way. Now I can pull this guy off and has the rest of the plates on it. And there's a big washer that goes behind that. No problem at all. And this guy can come off. Okay, so here we are. Can put this guy in here. So to remove this, we're going to have to remove the supercharger gear, this guy here. It's like our oil pump stuff has got to come off. But other than that, it looks like we can get it out of there, hopefully. Okay, so after a little bit of reading, they tell you that you need to remove the supercharger chain. So this guide is going to have to come off. The oil pump chain has got to be removed, so this guide has got to come off. I believe this sprocket has to come off for the oil pump. And then we can get at this stuff. So first things first, let's get these guides off of here. I'm using a 5 millimeter. Well, I think I'm gonna have to break those loose with something a little more substantial. There we go. Break that one loose. These have got Loctite on them, so I know that they can be a little stubborn. But anyway, we'll get this guy off. Okay. And we got to get this guy off. Okay. So now our little chain guard is here. Put those bolts close by. I've got another little basket here for parts. Kind of keep them separate. We don't need the big ones. Don't need to be in there, but we'll keep these guys where they need to be. Okay, here's our chain for our oil pump. Again, this gear is going to have to come off. This guy's got to come off. So let's get this guide out of here. Okay, and the guide is off. There are spacers in behind both of these, so you got to make sure you don't lose those. Put our bolts back in, and this will be that part of it. So our transmission is here. Here is our supercharger gear. I think I'm going to have to pull the tensioner off, which sucks, but oh well. Actually, well, we'll see. Let's get this guide off of here if I can. Alright, that comes out of there. This is where the tensioner goes. But I think I can, because of the fact there's no oil pressure behind it, it might be okay. I still may have to, we still may have to undo it and tension it up. But for now, what we need here is a 6mm. Need something with a little more oomph. We can do it. And there it comes loose. All right. Good shooting. Okay, supercharger gear is off. There's a washer that goes in front of that, so we will keep that together. And we'll keep all this together. I'm going to go count the teeth on that SE because they sent that also. But anyway, okay, I was correct. The oil pump driven gear, excuse me, it's got some marks on it, but it is a left-hand thread. So and we'll get that bolt out of there. So and it's got Loctite on it. So okay, so now our transmission is basically ready to come out. All right, that's a T40. Let's see what we got here. See how tough these are. Ah, not bad. Okay, so now we will wind these boys out. Here we go. Let's do a double. We're just doing a double check and making sure that everything is out. It needs to be out. And so far it looks like we're ready to pull this transmission out. Now we'll see what happens here when I yank on it. not much. I'm going to go to the other side and give it a few love taps. And those few love taps has it coming right out. Okay, here we go. I still may have to tap on the other side a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah, I think so. I really don't want the supercharger gear to come out. It doesn't look like it is. All right, let's go to the other side and a few more love taps. That way. All right, so now just a few more gentle little taps here. Like everything is starting to move, which is nice. The other side and check. It's come out. Okay, nothing is holding it on here. Here it comes. All right, boys and girls, the moment of truth. Here comes this transmission. Get this chain out of there and find out what went wrong. So far it looks okay. I don't know what happened yet. So I'm going to move this over to the bench, and there it is, the broken tooth. I knew it was a broken tooth. I could tell, and it is what it is. Now, did it hurt the other shaft at all? Well, to be honest, it did. It chewed this guy up a little bit. Now, is it still usable? Yeah, it could be, but we don't need to. We are going to be putting in our other transmission, this guy here. So the only thing that we need to do is we're going to pull this supercharger drive off. Let's go take a quick look inside. Let me grab a flashlight so we all can see what's going on. And I want to know where that goofy tooth, oh, here it is right there. There's the tooth. Yep. So our tale of woe, the good part is that we didn't have to go digging around for the tooth. That's great. It just broke off clean. It's laying right there, and we are in wonderful shape. Got a little cleaning to do here and there. Our supercharger gear is all in good shape. Everything looks nice. Oh yeah, no sweat. This is great stuff. All right, that was really not the worst job in the world. So it is the next day, and I've been cleaning up some of the stuff on the counter shelf side, just getting all that chain lube and stuff that builds up in there out of there, making sure all the seals are perfectly clean. Everything is nice. We are ready to go on ahead and put in our new transmission. The new transmission, I've been just making sure everything is wiped down and everything is good. I cleaned out and made sure that there is no debris or anything that had come out of the old transmission, which it didn't. It was a clean break. There was no extra particles in there. I've run through everything with a magnet, so we're in good shape. The oil's been drained anyway, so we are ready to go ahead and start putting this bad boy back together. So I will get things arranged and we will start in. Okay, we are ready to push our transmission in. Here we go. And it's should be a fairly straightforward operation. Hold on for a minute. Okay, here we go. So, oops, I just need to push this in. gently. It's not the lightest thing in the world, that's for sure. So we'll take this by this shaft, and we're just going to kind of get things going into place. If I can get them started. Look in there. Low. Okay, there we go. And it's going in. Make sure everybody's lined up. Yep. Okay. And this has to go over the supercharger shaft. Make sure that's all lined up. This is all lined up. Oh, we're off a little bit. There we go. Now we can push in a little more. Going over the supercharger shaft. Whoop. I want to keep this gasket from moving around too much because it's actually a brand new gasket. I just put it in a little while ago. I was checking something in there, making sure the clutch was okay, which it was. All right, so here we go. Keep right on going here. So far so good. And there it goes. It just popped right into place. Wow. Sweet. How's that? Boom, boom, boom. We were in neutral and everything is looking really nice. Super free. Everything is looking just wonderful. I love it. So I'm going on ahead and going to be putting in these bolts. I checked and they are 15 foot-pounds. So we will torque all those guys down to 15 as soon as we get them all in. So nowhere in the service manual could I find an order for this, so we're just going to go on ahead and we're going to just go on ahead and torque these guys to 15 foot-pounds. That's what we're going to do. We'll start here and we'll just go across. And we'll go up here and we'll go down here. All right, our transmission is in and we are just about ready to start putting on the shift mechanisms. Okay, and we're going to put in our shift shaft. There's a washer here. Make sure that goes in because it got stuck on there and fell down. So whenever you're doing that, make sure that washer is amongst you. And then this guy can just go straight in here. And I wobble it back and forth so when it gets to the seal, it doesn't want to bind up on anything. So we just take this guy. We're going to get, you need to go, there's a pin and it goes in between the springs. And you just pop that in and it is good to go. So the next thing we're going to be dealing with is the supercharger. Here's the supercharger chain. Now I had just changed this chain, a few thousand miles ago just because, and it was just for a maintenance thing. I wanted to make sure it was okay. So this is a brand new chain, but it needs to go up inside and over the supercharger gear. And it can be a little fiddly because you're blind and you just got to kind of find the gear and get it up over the top. Oh, there it goes. I do believe we got it. Yes, we did. So our chain is on. So the next thing we got to do is we got to put on our supercharger gear. Now I'm not going to tighten it down, but I do need to put the chain on and the supercharger gear. And this is a stock size. And this is all about getting the tensioner back in. All right, so our supercharger gear is on. Now okay, so I had to loosen up the tensioner for the supercharger chain to get it at least loose. I had to pull the tank up a little bit, and I still have to get it out to reset it, but it won't stop us from putting all the rest of this together. So now the top adjuster can go in, and we can then go on ahead, torque it down, and then go on ahead and put in the bottom guide. And this is going to be, should be simple enough. Let's take our 5mm 89 inch-pounds, and we'll get that guy torqued in. And there's 89 inch-pounds. Just like the book says. All these 6mm all seem to be 89 foot-pounds in here. Okay. Then we need to take this guide, which goes underneath the supercharger chain, and we'll get it started. And you have to kind of work them both. And got that. We'll go on ahead and wind these down. And we'll wind this guy down. And we'll wind this guy down. And again with 89 inch-pounds. All right, so our supercharger chain, tensioner, and guide are in. The supercharger gear still has not been torqued down. Let's get the oil pump put back together here. And so to do this, it's not really hard. You take your chain here, and it goes around this, and then what you do is there is this guy here goes on here, and then you can take your oil pump driven gear, and then what you have to do with this is you make sure that there's an in and an out on here. So make sure the out is, it says right on it, out. So you just go on ahead and you put this guy in place. And it's a little fiddly. And there it is. Okay. So our supercharger, our oil pump chain is on. There's a guide that goes in here. So we will get that guide in place. And it just has two of these shoulder bolts in it. And it can only go on the one way, I think. Okay, so we've got the guide in. Sorry, the camera died again. I seem to do that a lot. But again, we need to torque our guys down to 89 inch-pounds. We'll get that in. That one's done. This is the supercharger chain. Done. This. And okay, so the next thing we need to do is we're going to put on our oil pump gear, and I'm going to clean out the threads with a little bit of contact cleaner. I've already cleaned up the bolt. Get that out of there so that we have a nice dry surface. And we'll just clean up the bolt again. Why not? One more time. Not going to hurt anything. And then blow it off there. Now we're going to take some blue thread locker and put some on exactly where the factory had put some on. Whoops, you got to pull this out. And we'll put a dab of blue thread locker on there. Maybe. There we go. We're getting some now. Good. And now this is a left-handed bolt. So when you screw it in, you turn it to the left to get it tight. We'll wind it down like we normally do, but this time we'll be turning to the left. Okay, and we'll take our torque wrench, 89 inch-pounds, gear, and got that. And I'm going to hold this like this. And here we go. "89 inch-pounds. Very good. So we're good. So our oil pump is in. There's a little bit of slack in there, but that's okay. I had replaced this chain previously, so it's fairly new. So our oil pump is in. Our supercharger gears are in. We now need to get the supercharger gear Loctited properly. So what we're going to do here is, again, on this, we need to, and this guy's got a oiling hole in it, so you got to be careful of that. And so we're going to get this guy clean first, just like we did the other, so that whatever Loctite we use in there. And now I'm going to get this guy cleaned up, so it's perfect again too. So our supercharger calls for some non-permanent locking agent. So we got our blue Loctite ready. Throw some of that on there. Make sure we got a good, we know our bolt is clean. And this gets torqued to 15 foot-pounds. That's, okay. 15 foot-pounds, we're all set. So the next thing to do is our shift shaft is in. This is torqued down properly. These two guys are torqued down properly. Our tensioner is what it is. I got to pull that thing out. That's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, so we've got all that. Everything is torqued down. This is torqued down. So we are ready to start put our clutch on. Okay, to install our clutch, we first put it, whoops, there's a big bushing that goes on first. It goes right up against the oil pump piece. There's a bearing that goes on that, and then you can take this and put your clutch on, okay, and the clutch engages into the drive on the engine, but the next thing you have to do is you have to rotate the oil pump, and I'll pull that back out and get it out of sync. Okay, so you put this in, and the clutch basket isn't all the way in. What you have to do is rotate the oil pump so that it engages into the clutch. And there it is. And you heard it pop in. Okay, so once your clutch basket is in, you then put in this big washer. You can then put on the clutch hub. There is a washer with a bunch of teeth in it, and I think what they did is in 2018 they changed it a little bit. It used to have some sort of dampening device in there. So you've got that, and then what you're going to end up with is putting on the nut. And this nut's got a little, has a little portion of it that's beat in a little bit so that it kind of catches on the thread and kind of self-locks. They tell you to replace it every time, but you can beat that back in and get it so that right now, see, the nut is stopped because it's binding on the threads like it should. And so all that we need to do is wind this in and we'll be good to go. So first things first is we need to lock our clutch holder in. You don't want to do it too tight. You just want to have it good enough to hang on to it so it doesn't slip off. Okay, and this is going to hit up against here, so when we put the torque wrench on it, it will have something to hold on to. So I have set the torque wrench to 96 foot-pounds. I don't know if you can see that, but it's 95.9. We're going to go with 96. So we're just going to wind this bad boy on. There we go. And it popped right off. But anyway, that's okay. It was buzzing at us. So the first thing we need to do is we start with the fiber because it goes up against the clutch hub, and there's a little, there's a ring underneath there. And we can just start throwing these guys in. And they go in this way. There's one. Then we put in, and if you ever put in a clutch plate, a steel plate, there's kind of a rounded edge, and then there's a sharp edge. The sharp edge always goes out. That's the way they come from the factory, and so one would assume that's what you're supposed to do. And I read that in one of the service manuals somewhere. Clutch pusher. So clutch pusher goes in, there's a bearing that goes on that. This goes in here. Now we can put this on. So we've got our disc engaged into there, and this guy just gets pushed on into its holes. Okay, and we'll get, now you take your clutch springs, put everything in there by hand, get them started into the right spots. There you go. Push this in a little bit, and then you can just start these by hand. Make sure they start by hand and they go in, because if you don't do it, it's really easy to strip them. Gently, just kind of work them down. Try to just do it evenly. Don't. I think we got them wound down. Okay, and then 89 inch-pounds. Like every other 6mm bolt. 1, 2, and 3. Done. So in preparation for putting the cover back on, what you want to do is, what I did, is I took a plastic razor blade, and they tell you need to put some sealant around any kind of grommet or where the cases come together. In this case, it's right there and right there. So I just took this plastic razor blade, scraped off the old sealant pretty well, and then I'm just going to take a little bit of acetone, and I'm just going to wipe things down, make sure it's all cleaned up in those areas. We'll just give it a little bit of a wipe. Good cleaning. Then for whatever, my go-to sealant is Yamabond number 4. Honda makes a number 4 bond, and I think it's the same thing. But this stuff is a good color for around cases, and it actually works extremely well. It just does a good job of sealing. So we just put a little dab here and a little dab right here, and that's it. That's all we need to do for sealing that up. We're ready to put our case back on. Okay, so here's our case screws, and I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to grab another one right here. And this is just to hold the gasket in place. while we put this in up there. There's one, and number two. Okay, good. And again, 89 inch-pounds. We're just going to start here. All right, that's done. Case is all on. Everything's in its proper place. Bit of a wipe. And just an FYI, you can remove the supercharger tensioner without removing the throttle bodies. It ain't easy, but you can do it. So to begin the assembly of our final drive side, what we need to do here is, first things first is put in your clutch push rod. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you don't damage any seals when you go in with it. And you have to kind of fiddle with it to get it all the way in. Then there's this guard. Now I put the guard on loosely at first. It sits in there. It sits on some dowels, but sometimes it's very hard to get the sprocket on there with this in place, so you just can kind of leave it loose. All right. So the first thing we need to do is get our gear indicator sensor in place. There's an O-ring that goes around it. Make sure you've got that. But you have to kind of work this back and forth until it indexes in. So get your spacer, and this should have just a little bit of oil on it to run that seal. Yeah, we don't want to run up against a dry seal there. That'd be silly. So we'll put this guy on and slide him in, and perfect. Okay. Now we can put our sprocket on. Okay, slide it over, and now I can just turn the wheel wherever I need it, hopefully. There it is. All right, so our guard is on. Our sprocket is there. Okay, we have a lock washer for this. We have our nut. Make sure your lock washer is engaged in the teeth. Our nut. And we are going to be retorquing this thing to 105 foot-pounds. Now let's see if we can get this guy in there. Like I say, it's kind of a royal pain to do. This hose gets in the way, but it comes around, and then finally, but once you do, you get that, you get it kind of lined up. Okay. So we'll get our gasket on in its proper place, push this on. Now the clutch may, it may have to be dealt with a little bit, because what happens is the fluid starts flowing downhill, and you can, it will kind of push the slave cylinder out a little bit. Okay, so it's in place. So now all that we need to do, there's a couple bolts that go in there. Okay, a little tight. Get that one tight. Now we can take the last. Okay, so continuing on, our clutch is all assembled. Everything works perfect. That's in great shape. We've got our gear shift selector in the right place, all bolted down, ready to go. Everything is all cleaned up. I haven't put this on yet, but we need to torque this. Now, there's a couple ways that you can go about this. You can find some tools and grab onto it and try and torque it to 100 foot-pounds. excuse me, 105 foot-pounds, and mess around with it. And yeah, and if you don't have a big torque wrench, it can be a pain. But there's another alternative, and it's called a torque stick. And these torque sticks are familiar to a lot of mechanics. And what they do is you can put this on a 1/2-inch drive gun like this. It has a ton of power. And whoop, didn't want to do that, but put your socket on there. Put this guy on here. And it will limit the torque that it distributes to whatever size the torque stick is. So here we go. We've got our torque stick, and just all you got to do is just kind of hit it until it stops, and we are at 105 foot-pounds. And it's just that easy. The torque sticks are available on Amazon. They are very, very well tested. They've been around for a long, long time. They're relatively accurate. They're about within 10%, which is good enough for a sprocket like this. So consider that instead of doing something else. And look how fast I did it. I just boom, 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 I'm done. And we'll then go on ahead and crimp over our, we'll just do it in the same place it was before. Get this a little closer. How about that one? Yeah, that's good. And one more. Okay, not going anywhere. Torque correctly. Super simple. And away we go. So let's get this guy lined up. And I believe he sits something about like that. It was level. When I noticed it was level when I took it off. So you got to pay attention to those things. And here's the bolt that goes in it. Nice, nice. Everything's good. Everything's nice and tight. Wonderful. So now, then this guy just goes on. And okay, so we're ready to put some oil in this thing. I think I'll put the oil in before I put on all the fairings and whatnot so that they're not in the way. But one of the hardest things you can do on an H2 is get oil in this thing without making a giant size mess. This is a silicone funnel, and it's basically for cooking, I guess. And these things, you can just kind of flex them in, and it does make life a ton easier to put oil in. So I'm just going to go on ahead and start dripping in some oil here. And we got a whole gallon in there without spilling a drop. How cool is that? And we'll have to run it a little bit to check our oil level, and we'll top it off if we need to put in some more. Okay, and now we can go on ahead and start putting on the fairings. And the only thing you have to do on this one is need to, oops, there's a hose that goes onto the radiator, because this is the overflow tank is in the fairing. You just push this guy on, he's on. Then you can go on ahead and hang the fairing on there. It'll kind of hang in place. And the first thing you do with these is you can snap it in so it's held in place, and we can just start putting in the screws. So we're all set. Everything is all done. We're ready to start this thing. So here we go. Everything is put back in. Nice. Get our key in. And we will be able to, the supercharger chain is going to make a little noise because it needs to pressurize, but everything should be okay. I think we're all good. away we go. We are done. The only thing left to do is clean up a little bit, and then we'll go for a ride. Well, that's what it takes to put a transmission in a Kawasaki Ninja H2. There are other Kawasaki's that also have that cassette style transmission, so the operation is basically similar. And even though this is not something you want to have happen to you, where a broken tooth on a transmission, I have been abusing this transmission for about 85,000 miles. Second gear has always been one of my favorites for doing wheelies, and it's kind of you don't bang it, you just kind of roll it on and the front wheel comes up, and even at this altitude it does that. You take it down to sea level and it's really nuts. But anyway, the transmission broke, so I found an SE transmission for a reasonable price and popped it in there. It is not a huge deal. I mean, the hardest part of the whole thing really was getting at the bolts for the supercharger chain. And even though I didn't really film that very much, it was just kind of one of those things where you just kind of have to work a ratchet back and forth in there. You pull it out and then you can the whole thing comes out, you reset it and pop it back in and just kind of fight those bolts. But that was the worst part of the whole thing. Everything else was just basically a piece of cake, straightforward, boom, 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 go on through it. So this is really, to be quite honest, a do-yourself job. The bad part about the H2 is they don't want to sell you different parts, so I had to get a whole transmission. But the SE transmission is better suited for street riding. So anyway, thanks for watching. I know it's kind of a long video, but you know, if you go all the way through, especially if you need to see how something looks, hopefully it's useful to you. So again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and we'll see you next time here on GearHeadGeeks, where we'll have something that isn't so much of a tale of woe. So thanks for watching.